Parents on Reddit, what was your "I raised an idiot" moment? When they act just like me. Yeah, well, they had to learn it from somewhere. He knew there was a frozen pizza in the garage, but couldn't find it. Didn't even think to check in the freezer. Now, where's that frozen pizza? Was it in the car? Was it next to the table saw? I can't remember. My cousin got busted with weed at school in her locker. When the cops came, she said, "I wasn't gonna smoke it, I'd just sell it." Facepalm. Well, based on how messed up all the drug laws are, you never really know what you're gonna get in more trouble for. When they mistook a leaky radiator hose for smoke. No problem, it kinda looks the same. They continued to drive the car home thinking it was on fire, and then pulled it into the garage that is attached to the house. Well, I mean, I have to agree with the kid in this one. Anytime my car just starts smoking and catches on fire while I'm driving, I like to at least get home before I worry about that. I mean, it's just too much of a hassle to pull off to the side of the road. I don't think he's an idiot, but I think he lacks common sense, because he'll take a bite of food, it will be scalding hot, he'll cry and act like he's dying, but won't spit it out. He'll say, "Mommy, it's hot," and I'll say, "Well, I told you to wait for it to cool down," or "then blow on it," or something to that effect. He will say no, and then continue taking scalding hot bites and crying that it's too hot. In his defense, his father's the same way. Yeah, I guess it is seen as a bit inappropriate to ever spit food out, even if it is hot. So I think that once you've put food in your mouth, you've kind of just committed by then. I haven't, and I hope I don't have to, but my dad said almost exactly that line in reference to my brother. My dad told me about a conversation they had that went like this, as best I remember. It says, when his third child was born and looked nothing like him, I told him he should get a DNA test, and he told me he wished he could, but it was too late. I asked what he meant, and he said by now all the DNA would have mixed, and there would be no way to tell who the child's father was. After I explained how DNA works to him, he still didn't believe me. When I asked him why he wouldn't just try, on the off chance I was right, that rather than being on the hook for child support for a child he had literally seen for 12 hours total over the first year of his life, he said, "It's just 21 more years anyhow, why waste my time?" Yeah, why wait it out for a couple hours when you can just pay for a couple decades instead? My 13-year-old son was sniffing really hard and moving his head all around the area he was standing in. Slightly concerned he had lost his mind, I asked him what he was doing. He told me, "I farted. I'm trying to smell it all up so you don't have to smell it." He's a thoughtful idiot. Well, I'm not sure that's going to do very good, but thanks for making the sacrifice anyway. 3-year-old is preparing for his bath. His underwear looks strange, but I'm distracted by his brother. The kid takes off one pair of underwear, then a second pair, then a third. I ask why he's wearing 3 pairs of underwear. The kid looks at me like I'm an idiot. Mom told me to put on a clean pair every day. That non-autistic kid grew up to place the highest in math in our large Midwestern city. But even in his 20s, you have to make sure you give clear instructions, as he will follow rules to the letter. Okay, but if you're just putting another clean layer of underwear on, you're still only making the lowest one dirty, so every clean one you put on top of it, they're just gonna stay clean forever anyway. I'm the idiot. I registered for college and spelled my middle name wrong, but didn't notice for 4 years since they had always abbreviated to my initial. I was showing my parents my diploma before walking on graduation day, and my mom just stared at me like I was special. The bonus points, I actually thought that was how it was spelled. I mean, middle names are kinda just pointless in general, though. I mean, just the fact that you can go through life just without even having one makes me think they're not that important. When one of my daughters tries to insult the other by telling her how ugly she is. They're identical twins. Well, maybe she just has really low self-esteem. I'm a parent, but my children are brilliant angels who can do no wrong. This is my mother's favorite story about me. When I was about 2, I climbed up on my sister's crib, jumped off, and said, "Look, Mommy, I'm swimming." Of course, I started bawling as I hit the floor. A neighbor came over, because of thin walls and hearing screaming, and asked what's wrong and what happened. I stop crying and tell her, no, I'll show you, and proceed to swim again. I didn't know people needed no diving signs on cribs. Definitely not an idiot, but I love this story about my kid. I used to pay the guy who took care of the yard for me by writing a check, putting it in a baggie, and sticking it under the mat. One weekend I was on the phone while writing the check, so I asked my son to put the check in the baggie under the mat for me. I went on with the conversation and forgot about it. A few days later, the guy who takes care of the lawn calls me up and said he looked everywhere but can't find the check. While we were talking, I opened the door and lift up the mat, and no check. He says, "You're really great customers," so I was surprised that the check wasn't there. I was surprised too. I looked around, behind bushes, under a decoration, no check. Then, I try to think like my son. I look under the mat inside the front door, and there's the check. We still laugh about it. See, all you had to do was just break in and everything would have been fine. When my son was disappointed by sex ed class, he thought they were going to learn some moves. Yeah, it would be a little bit more interesting if sex ed started out with the teacher just saying, "Alright, boys and girls, pick a partner and pair up." I used to tell my kids not to take off their shoes and socks in the car, especially on short trips. Just leave them on so we don't have to spend 5 minutes finding and putting them back on before we run into the store. Imagine a single dad with 2 young kids running around the car, trying to re-shoe my children in the grocery store parking lot in the middle of an Arizona summer. Yuck. One day we went to the store and my daughter was missing her shoe. It was nowhere to be found. "Daddy, I didn't want you to be mad that my shoe was off, so I threw it out the window." It made sense to a 5-year-old, I guess. Well, I mean, I guess that skips the step of having to put them back on, so, sure, that saves time. My brother couldn't remember the proper name for shoes, so he called them foot houses. My mom confirmed that day that at least one of her teenage children was a bit doughy up top. Well, just make sure that you don't throw your foot houses out the car window. A couple weeks ago, our Chihuahua was horny and tried to bone his sister. I said to a husband that the dog reminded me of a frustrated teen lad and he needs a cold shower. 20 minutes later, my 17-year-old walks in holding a distraught and dripping dog, wrapped in a towel. He'd overheard the conversation and literally put him in a cold shower. In March, in the UK. I swear, raising this kid is like painting by numbers, and every so often he goes dramatically over the lines. I feel like there was a lot of UK slang in this one. It was almost hard to understand. When my son was 11 years old, he confidently informed me that he was pretty sure he knew everything there was to know, because he tried to think of something that he didn't know and couldn't think of anything. Wow, this kid's really peaked, and he's only 11. My 14-year-old son went into a dressing room to try on 5 pairs of pants. After waiting 15 minutes and yelling twice into the men's dressing room to see if he was okay, he admitted he couldn't find the shorts he had worn in. He gave me 3 pairs of the pants and still couldn't find them. I finally had to go into the stall to look. They were balled up in the leg of one of the pair of pants. It was extremely noticeable. He swore that he took his shorts off before trying on any of the pants, so he didn't think to look in them. I was speechless. He's in the gifted and talented program in our school district. Yeah, I don't know what it is about dressing rooms that sometimes people just kinda get stupid. Because I remember when I was like 12 or something and I went to some big swimming event thing with a bunch of other guys around my age. And there was just some kid there that took off all of his clothes, but then realized he forgot to bring in his swimsuit. So rather than putting his clothes back on, he's like running out and like trying to scream for like his parent or something to bring him his swimming suit because he forgot it and he needs to put it on right now. When my youngest son, who was 10 at the time, was getting his ears checked at the pediatrician and they found a foreign object in his left ear. Said object was a dead housefly because he thought sticking a fly in his ear would give him flying powers. He had caught it and shoved it in there alive about a week prior. Well, he might be the first person that's ever tried that, so I mean it was worth a shot. My African-American friend had a son who asked him, "Do white people poop white poop? Because we brown people poop brown poop." If it comes out white, there's probably something wrong with your diet. I'm the idiot kid, but when I was about 3, after preparing dinner, my mom would leave me alone in the kitchen. After I finished, I would search for some M&Ms to nibble at, knowing I wasn't allowed. Every time after I finished, I would go over to my mom and ask her, "Did you hear me eating M&Ms in the kitchen?" She would always reply yes, and I would always get so frustrated because every time I tried to be as stealthy as possible. I never realized what blew my cover until I grew older. Well, hey, sometimes you just need to ask for feedback when trying to produce the perfect crime. My daughter calls me, "There's a cop behind me with his lights on. What should I do?" Yes, just come straight home and don't talk to the stranger. I told my kid that carrots help you see in the dark. He then went into the basement with a carrot and started waving it around like a flashlight. Well, that looks like that's all for the stupidest things people have ever said or done for... I guess that's just kind of like the Wednesday trend on this channel right now. I mean, I would say leave your own stories in the comments, but you guys already do that. You don't even ask for my permission to leave comments on my videos, so... I guess I'll see you again on Friday.